The accidental encounter. The warning lights painted the bridge of the Horizon's Dream in shades of crimson and amber. Commander Rachel Torres felt her stomach drop as the ship bucked violently beneath her feet. The deck plates groaned like a wounded animal. Through the forward viewport, space itself seemed to be tearing apart, folding in ways that human eyes were never meant to witness. Engine containment failing, Lieutenant Marcus Webb shouted from his station, his fingers dancing across the holographic controls. The quantum drive is collapsing. We need to abort the jump now. Rachel gripped the edge of her command chair, knuckles white. The Horizon's Dream was humanity's most advanced exploration vessel, built to push the boundaries of known space. They had been on a routine survey mission, charting unexplored sectors at the edge of human territory. Nothing about this mission was supposed to go wrong. Nothing was supposed to be out here at all. Emergency shutdown initiated, Webb continued, his voice tight with controlled panic. Dumping core in 3, 2, 1. The ship lurched one final time. Then everything went still. The red lights faded to yellow, then to the normal blue glow of standard operations. Rachel released a breath she had not realized she was holding. Around her, the bridge crew began reporting status from their various stations. Hull integrity holding at 92%, called out Ensign Sarah Kim from damage control. Minor breaches on decks 4 and 7 already sealed. Navigation systems rebooting, added Webb. Give me a minute to figure out where we actually ended up. Rachel nodded and turned to the viewport. What she saw there made the words die in her throat. The crew fell silent one by one as they noticed what had captured their commander's attention. They were surrounded by structures. Massive, impossible structures that made Earth's largest space stations look like children's toys. Rings of metal and crystal orbited each other in perfect synchronization, each one large enough to encircle a small moon. Energy fields shimmered between them like curtains of colored light. And everywhere ships moved through the space between these megastructures. Ships of designs Rachel had never seen, sleek and powerful and utterly alien. "My God," whispered Dr. Thomas Chin, the ship's chief science officer. He had come to the bridge during the emergency and now stood frozen, his eyes wide. "What is this place?" Rachel had no answer. Humanity had been exploring space for 2 centuries. They had found abandoned ruins and primitive microorganisms, but never anything like this. Never a civilization that could build on such a scale. The communication system crackled to life. A voice emerged, speaking in a language that sounded like crystals chiming in precise mathematical patterns. The ship's translation software struggled for a moment, parsing sounds that had never been programmed into its database. Then words began to form. "Unidentified vessel, you have violated Corvathian Imperial space. Power down all systems and prepare for boarding. Resistance will be met with immediate neutralization." Rachel exchanged glances with her crew. There was fear in their eyes, but also determination. They were explorers, trained to face the unknown with courage and curiosity. She took a deep breath and activated the communication panel. "This is Commander Rachel Torres of the Earth vessel Horizon's Dream. We mean no harm. Our ship malfunctioned and we arrived here by accident. We are peaceful explorers from the planet Earth. We request permission to make repairs and leave your space." Silence stretched for what felt like hours but was probably only seconds. Rachel watched as several of the alien ships changed course, moving toward the Horizon's Dream with deliberate purpose. They were smaller than the megastructures but still dwarfed her vessel. Each one bristled with weapons and glowed with energy signatures that made their reactor readings look like candle flames. Finally the voice returned. "Earth. Humanity. These designations do not exist in Imperial records. You are an unregistered species. You are not a recognized civilization. You are not a tributary state. You possess no legal standing within Corvathian space." Rachel felt a chill run down her spine. The voice was not angry or threatening. It was simply stating facts, the way one might describe the properties of a rock or the temperature of empty space. To these beings, humanity was not an enemy. Humanity was nothing at all. "Please," Rachel said, keeping her voice steady. "We are a spacefaring species. We have technology, culture, and civilization. We simply want to leave peacefully and return to our own territory. Your vessel will be impounded for study. Your biological samples will be cataloged. You will be relocated to appropriate containment facilities pending classification review. This is not negotiable. Comply or be destroyed." The transmission ended. Rachel turned to her crew, seeing the same helpless frustration reflected in their faces. The Horizon's Dream had defensive systems, weapons designed to deal with pirates or hostile environments. Against the fleet surrounding them, those weapons would be as effective as throwing stones at a hurricane. What do we do, Commander? Webb asked quietly. Rachel looked at each member of her bridge crew in turn. 47 souls depended on her decision. 47 people who had left Earth seeking knowledge and adventure, now trapped in a nightmare they could not have imagined. We comply, she finally said. We stay alive and we stay alert. There will be opportunities. We just need to survive long enough to find them. The next several hours passed in a blur of controlled chaos. Alien ships docked with the Horizon's Dream, cutting through the hull with precision that suggested they had done this countless times before. Beings in environmental suits boarded the vessel, tall figures encased in armor that reflected light in shifting patterns. They moved through the ship like they owned it, scanning everything with devices that hummed with unfamiliar energy. The crew was ordered to assemble in the cargo bay. Rachel got her first clear look at the Corvathians there. They stood nearly 3 meters tall, with bodies that seemed to be composed of segmented plates of dark blue material that might have been organic or technological. Their heads were elongated and smooth, with clusters of glowing sensors where eyes might be on a human face. They communicated with each other in those musical chiming tones, completely ignoring the humans gathering before them. One of the Corvathians stepped forward, its attention finally settling on the assembled crew. Rachel noticed that it wore different markings than the others, perhaps indicating rank or function. I am Harmonizer Kelvin, administrator of Imperial Classification Protocols, the being announced through a translation device. You will be processed according to standard procedures for unregistered biological entities. Remain silent unless directly questioned. Rachel stepped forward despite the warning. I am Commander Rachel Torres. I am the leader of this crew. I request silence. The word cut through the air like a knife. You possess no authority here. You possess no rights here. You are specimens awaiting classification. Nothing more. The Harmonizer turned to another Corvathian and began speaking in their native language. The translation device provided Rachel with fragments of their conversation. Initial scans complete. Carbon-based oxygen breathers. DNA-based genetic structure. Technology level approximately 0.003 on the Imperial scale. Cognitive capacity within acceptable range for basic tool use. Recommendation? Asked the second Corvathian. Classification pending. Relocate to Dust Haven for observation period. Low priority processing. These primitives show no signs of useful capabilities. Rachel felt anger burning in her chest, but she forced herself to remain calm. Showing emotion now would accomplish nothing. She needed to observe, to learn, to understand these beings who held humanity's fate in their hands. The journey to Dust Haven took 6 standard days. The humans were transferred to a transport vessel designed for moving cargo, not people. They were provided with food and water that tasted wrong, formulated for different biology but technically edible. No one spoke to them. No one explained what was happening. They were simply moved from point A to point B like furniture being rearranged. Rachel spent those days talking quietly with her crew, assessing their mental states and planning for whatever came next. Dr. Chin examined the food they were given, trying to understand Corvathian biochemistry. Webb studied the transport ship systems, memorizing every detail he could observe. Each person found their own way to stay focused, to hold on to hope when everything seemed hopeless. When they finally arrived at Dust Haven, Rachel understood immediately why it had that name. The planet was gray and brown, covered in dust storms that raged across barren continents. There was an atmosphere barely breathable, and a settlement that looked like it had been built and abandoned multiple times over centuries. Prefabricated structures huddled together near the landing zone, connected by tubes and tunnels that protected against the hostile environment outside. As the humans disembarked, Rachel saw that they were not alone. Other beings moved through the settlement, dozens of different species she had never seen before. Some walked on 2 legs, others on 4 or 6. Some had fur, others scales, and others still had features that defied easy description. But all of them shared one thing in common. They moved with the slow, defeated shuffle of beings who had given up. A Corvathian administrator met them at the landing pad. This one's armor was duller than the others, marked with scratches and stains that suggested long service in an unpleasant post. Welcome to Dust Haven, unregistered humans, the administrator said without inflection. This facility houses species awaiting final classification by Imperial authority. You will be provided with basic sustenance and shelter. You will not leave this planet. You will not attempt communication with registered Imperial citizens. Violation of these terms will result in immediate termination. The administrator gestured toward a section of the settlement that had been cleared for them. Your housing is prepared. Food distribution occurs twice per standard day. Medical facilities are available for emergencies only. Questions will not be answered. Complaints will not be heard. Adapt or perish. With that, the Corvathian turned and walked away, leaving the humans standing in the dust-choked wind. Rachel looked at her crew, seeing the despair beginning to creep into their eyes. She could not allow that. Not now. Not ever. All right, people, she said loud enough for everyone to hear. I know this looks bad. I know we are far from home in a situation we never trained for. But we are still alive, and that means we still have options. First priority is shelter. Second priority is establishing a routine. Third priority is learning everything we can about this place and the beings running it. We are explorers. This is just another planet to explore. Let's get to work. Her words seemed to break through the fog of shock. People began moving, organizing themselves, falling back on their training. Rachel watched them file toward the designated housing area, then turned to look out at the settlement beyond. Somewhere in this place were answers. Somewhere were weaknesses in the Corvathian system. Somewhere was the key to humanity's survival. She just had to find it before hope died completely. That night, Rachel could not sleep. She walked the perimeter of the human section, checking on her people and thinking about their impossible situation. The dust storms had died down, and through the clearing atmosphere she could see stars. Different constellations than those visible from Earth, but still beautiful in their own way. Still a reminder that the universe was vast and full of wonders, even if humanity currently faced the worst crisis in its history. You are the new arrivals. Rachel spun around, her hand instinctively moving to where her sidearm would have been if the Corvathians had not confiscated all their weapons. A figure stood in the shadows near one of the habitat structures. As it stepped forward into the light, Rachel saw that it was not Corvathian. The being was roughly humanoid in shape but covered in reddish-brown scales that reflected the settlement's lights in copper hues. Its face was flat with large golden eyes that blinked sideways. It moved with a careful deliberation that suggested either great age or great pain. Yes, Rachel said carefully. We are humans from Earth. I am Commander Rachel Torres. I am Thexus, the being replied, its voice a dry rasp that the translator rendered into clear English. I am what you might call a guide for new arrivals. I help them understand what this place truly is. You are a prisoner here too. Thexus made a sound that might have been laughter or crying. I have been here for 37 cycles of my homeworld. When I arrived, I still believed we would be freed. That the Corvathians would recognize our civilization's value and grant us status as a tributary species. I was young and foolish then. Rachel felt a weight settling over her. What happened? Nothing happened. That is the point. The Corvathians do not kill primitives directly. They simply place us here and forget about us. We are given enough to survive but never enough to thrive. No tools to build with. No resources to create technology. No purpose beyond waiting for a classification that will never come. Over time, species simply fade away. My people numbered 2,000 when we arrived. Now there are 63 of us left. In another generation there will be none. The old alien's words hit Rachel like a physical blow. This was humanity's future if she could not find another path. Slow extinction through systematic neglect. There has to be a way, Rachel said, more to herself than to Thexus. We cannot just accept this. Thexus studied her with those golden eyes for a long moment. The Corvathian Empire has existed for over 20,000 of your years. They have encountered thousands of species. Every one of them either submitted, was integrated, or was placed in facilities like this one. They have a system for everything, and that system has never failed them. What makes you think your kind will be any different? Rachel met the alien's gaze and felt something crystallize inside her. A determination born from desperation. A refusal to accept the unacceptable. Because we have to be different, she said quietly. Because I am not going to let my species die in this place. Because there has to be a weakness in any system this old and this rigid. And because we are humans. We have survived ice ages and plagues and wars. We have built civilizations from nothing multiple times in our history. We do not give up easily. Thexus was silent for a long time. The wind picked up again, carrying dust devils across the barren landscape. Finally the old alien spoke, its voice barely above a whisper. The Corvathians have one weakness. One blind spot they do not even recognize. What is it? They have never encountered a species that had nothing left to lose. Every species they have met before had homeworlds to protect, civilizations to preserve, and leverage that forced them to comply with imperial demands. But you humans are different. You are already at the bottom. You have no further to fall. That gives you a strange kind of freedom. Rachel felt her pulse quicken. What kind of freedom? The freedom to try things that sensible species would never risk. The freedom to explore paths that lead to ruin because you are already ruined. The freedom of the truly desperate. Thexus turned to leave, then paused and looked back. Use that freedom wisely, Commander Torres. You may not get another chance. And if you do find a way forward, remember those of us who never could. The old alien disappeared into the darkness, leaving Rachel alone with her thoughts. She stood there for a long time, looking up at the unfamiliar stars and thinking about everything she had learned. Humanity was trapped on a prison planet at the edge of a vast empire. They had no ships, no weapons, no allies, and no hope of rescue. By every logical measure, their situation was impossible. But Rachel Torres had built her career on solving impossible problems. She turned and walked back toward the human habitats, her mind already working through possibilities. There was work to do. She needed to organize her crew, establish communication protocols, and begin gathering information about the Corvathian Empire and its vulnerabilities. The Empire thought humans were nothing. They thought humanity would fade away like all the other forgotten species on Dust Haven. Rachel intended to prove them wrong. She intended to show them that nothing could be the most dangerous thing in the universe when it decided to become something. The real struggle was just beginning. And despite being the ultimate underdogs, humanity was about to enter the fight. Rising from nothing. 3 years had passed since the Horizon's dream stumbled into Corvathian space. 3 years since humanity was dumped on Dust Haven and forgotten. 3 years that had changed everything in ways the Empire could not have predicted. Daniel Park wiped lubricant from his hands and examined the power coupling he had just repaired. It was Corvathian technology, supposedly far beyond the comprehension of primitive species. The Empire's engineers had designed it to be maintenance-free for 1,000 years. Daniel had figured out how it worked in 6 months and had been improving the design ever since. He was no longer on Dust Haven. He was on Station Epsilon 7, a massive trade hub in the outer territories of the Corvathian Empire. His workshop occupied a forgotten storage bay in the station's lower levels, a space that the Empire had built centuries ago and then stopped caring about. It was perfect for someone who was not supposed to exist. Daniel was one of the wanderers. That was what escaped humans called themselves. The network of people who had found ways off Dust Haven and into the wider empire. It had started small, just a handful of engineers and scientists who convinced alien traders to smuggle them off the prison planet in exchange for repair work. But it had grown. There were now over 200 humans scattered across Corvathian space, each one carving out their own survival in the cracks of the Empire's vast infrastructure. The door chime sounded. Daniel set aside his tools and opened the entrance to find Vornak, a Kelthorian merchant who had been his client for nearly a year. The Kelthorians were one of the Empire's subject species, conquered so long ago that their history books no longer remembered what freedom looked like. But they remembered how to do business, and they had learned that human ingenuity was worth paying for. Park, Vornak said, using the human custom of addressing people by family names. The coupling you repaired last month. It is still working at 118% efficiency. My ship's fuel consumption has dropped by 15%. How is this possible? Daniel shrugged, a gesture he had learned the translator could convey to most species. Fresh perspective. The Corvathians designed that system 5,000 years ago. It works fine, so they never changed it. But I looked at it with eyes that have never seen it before. I asked questions nobody has asked in millennia. Turns out there were inefficiencies built into the original design that nobody ever noticed because everyone assumed it was already perfect. This was the truth the Empire did not understand. They had stopped innovating because they no longer needed to innovate. Their technology was good enough. Their systems worked adequately. Why waste resources improving something that was not broken? But humans saw everything differently. Every piece of alien technology was a puzzle to solve, a challenge to understand and potentially improve. Sometimes they failed, but sometimes they succeeded in ways that should have been impossible. Vornak's face tentacles quivered in what Daniel had learned to recognize as excitement. I have colleagues who would pay well for such improvements. Would you be willing to work on their ships? Of course. That is what I am here for. As Vornak left with promises of new clients, Daniel allowed himself a small smile. Another satisfied customer. Another thread in the web that humanity was weaving across the stars. He checked his communication device and found a coded message waiting for him. It was from the network, written in the private language that wanderers had developed to communicate safely. Regional gathering Epsilon 7, 3 days. Taurus sending delegates. Critical update on network strategy. Daniel felt his heartbeat quicken. Commander Taurus. The woman who had transformed Dust Haven from a dying prison into a secret academy. He had left the planet 2 years ago, but he still received regular updates through the network. Taurus had created a systematic program to prepare humans for life in the Empire. She taught languages, studied alien psychology, and trained people in skills that would make them valuable to other species. Every human who left Dust Haven now left prepared to survive and thrive. 3 days later, Daniel found himself in a forgotten maintenance tunnel deep in Station Epsilon 7's infrastructure. 23 humans gathered there, each one with their own story of survival. There was Dr. Amara Okafor, who had become a medical consultant to multiple species by finding treatments that Empire physicians had overlooked. There was Sophia Reyes, who ran a translation and mediation service that helped different species communicate across cultural barriers. There was young Tommy Chin, barely 16, who had an almost supernatural talent for learning alien languages and customs. And there, standing at the center of the group, was Rachel Torres herself. The commander had aged in 3 years. Her hair was now more gray than black and new lines marked her face. But her eyes still burned with the determination that had kept humanity alive when everything seemed lost. "Thank you all for coming," Rachel began without preamble. "I know the risks you took to be here. I would not have called this meeting if it were not critical." She activated a holographic projector, one that Daniel recognized as heavily modified Corvathian technology. The display showed a map of Empire space, vast beyond human comprehension. Thousands of systems, millions of worlds, trillions of beings. "This is what we are dealing with," Rachel continued. "The Corvathian Empire. 20,000 years of continuous rule. The most powerful civilization in this sector of the galaxy. They have absorbed or eliminated every species they have encountered. Their technology is millennia beyond ours. Their military could sterilize Earth without even slowing down." She paused and looked at each person in the room. "And they have absolutely no idea what to do with us." A ripple of confused murmurs went through the group. Rachel smiled, a thin expression that held no humor but plenty of satisfaction. "Think about what we have accomplished in 3 years. We have 200 wanderers operating across Empire space. We have established ourselves as skilled workers, innovators and problem solvers. We have made contacts with 47 different species. We have access to technology and information that the Empire thinks is secure. And we have done all of this while officially not existing." Daniel raised his hand. "Commander, what is the end goal here? We have survived, even thrived in some ways, but we are still technically illegal refugees. What are we working toward?" "Recognition," Rachel said simply. "Not as primitives to be studied or warehoused, but as a legitimate species with a place in the galactic community. And I believe we are closer to that goal than anyone realizes." She changed the holographic display to show economic data, resource flows, and efficiency reports across multiple sectors of the Empire. The Corvathian Empire is dying. Not quickly, not obviously, but dying nonetheless. Their economy has been stagnant for 3,000 years. Their innovation rate is effectively zero. Their subject species are loyal only because they have forgotten how to be anything else. The Empire is like a machine that has been running so long that everyone has forgotten it needs maintenance. Dr. Okafor leaned forward. "How does recognizing this help us?" "Because dying systems need fresh blood. They need innovation. They need problem solvers and bridge builders and people willing to try new approaches. They need exactly what we have been providing for 3 years, even if they have not acknowledged it yet." Daniel began to understand. "You want us to make ourselves indispensable. More than that. I want us to become essential. I want humanity to fill the gaps in the Empire's infrastructure. I want us to solve problems they cannot solve themselves. I want us to become so deeply embedded in the functioning of Imperial society that removing us would cause more damage than officially recognizing us." Sophia Reyes spoke up, her voice thoughtful. "This could take decades. It could take generations," Rachel agreed. "But we have something the Empire does not have. We know how to struggle. We know how to start from nothing and build something meaningful. We know how to adapt and survive when everything is against us. That is what being human means. That is our strength." The meeting continued for hours. Plans were discussed, resources were allocated, and new objectives were established. The network was growing, spreading its influence deeper into Imperial society. Humans were becoming fixers, the species you called when nothing else worked, But then, 3 months later, everything changed. Daniel was in his workshop when the emergency broadcast came through. Every screen on Station Epsilon 7 lit up with the same message. There had been a catastrophic failure in the Corvathian Empire's resource distribution network. A central processing facility had collapsed, and the automated systems designed to route materials across hundreds of worlds had cascaded into failure. Food shipments were stranded. Medical supplies were stuck in warehouses. Power generation facilities were running out of fuel. The Empire was facing its first genuine crisis in over 1,000 years. Daniel watched as Corvathian administrators appeared on the screens, their musical voices tight with something that might have been panic. They were calling for solutions, reaching out to every technical specialist in the Empire. But their own rigid systems were failing them. Their engineers kept proposing solutions that would take months or years to implement. The Empire had optimized for stability, not for rapid response to unexpected problems. Daniel's communication device buzzed. A message from Rachel, just 2 words, "Show them." He understood immediately. This was the moment they had been working toward. The chance to prove that humanity could offer something the Empire desperately needed. Daniel opened a communication channel to the station's administration. "This is Daniel Park, Independent Systems Engineer. I believe I can restore partial functionality to the distribution network within 72 hours. There was a pause. Then a Corvathian administrator appeared on his screen, its sensor clusters focused intently on him. "You are human. An unregistered species. You have no clearance for Imperial infrastructure." "That is true," Daniel said calmly. "I also have no investment in the old ways of doing things. I can see your system with fresh eyes. I have been studying Corvathian technology for 3 years, and I know where the inefficiencies are. Give me access to the network protocols and a team of 3 assistants, and I will have cargo moving again before the food riots start." The administrator was silent for a long moment. Daniel could almost see the calculations happening behind those glowing sensors. The Empire's pride against the Empire's need. Protocol against pragmatism. "Proceed," the administrator finally said. "You will be monitored constantly. Failure will result in your immediate deportation back to Dust Haven. Success will be noted in your file." "Understood." Daniel got to work. He reached out through the Wanderer network, pulling in Dr. Chen from Station Gamma 4 and 2 other human engineers from nearby facilities. Together, they dove into the Empire's distribution system, a piece of infrastructure so old and complex that the Corvathians themselves had stopped fully understanding it centuries ago. What Daniel found was both worse and better than he expected. The system was not actually broken. It had simply encountered a scenario that its original programmers had not anticipated. The automated routing algorithms were stuck in a logic loop, unable to decide how to redistribute resources after the central facility's collapse. Every Corvathian solution focused on rebuilding the central facility, which would take months. Daniel took a different approach. He did not try to fix what was broken. He worked around it. He reprogrammed the routing algorithms to function without central coordination, turning the distribution network from a hub-and-spoke system into a decentralized web. It was not elegant by Corvathian standards, but it worked. 68 hours after he started, cargo began moving again. Food shipments reached hungry populations. Medical supplies arrived at hospitals. Power plants received the fuel they needed. The crisis was not solved, but it was contained. The Empire noticed. Within a week, Daniel received a formal communication from Imperial administration. They wanted to meet with him. They wanted to understand how a primitive species had accomplished what Empire engineers could not. They wanted to know if other humans possessed similar capabilities. Daniel contacted Rachel immediately. She arrived at Station Epsilon 7 within days, bringing with her a delegation of wanderers who represented the full range of human skills and knowledge. The meeting took place in a conference chamber that had probably not been used in decades. Corvathian administrators filled one side of the room, their tall forms arranged in perfect geometric precision. Rachel and her delegation faced them from the other side, a group of humans who looked impossibly small and fragile in comparison. Harmonizer Kelvin, the same administrator who had processed humanity 3 years earlier, led the Corvathian delegation. Its sensor clusters swept across the humans with something that might have been curiosity. "Humans of Earth," Kelvin began. "Your species has demonstrated unexpected capabilities. The individual known as Daniel Park solved a crisis that our own engineers could not address in the available timeframe. This suggests that our initial classification of your species may have been incomplete." Rachel stood. "Harmonizer Kelvin, What we demonstrated was not advanced technology or superior intellect. It was simply a different way of thinking. The Korvathian Empire has optimized its systems over thousands of years. That optimization is your strength, but it is also a weakness. When something unexpected happens, your systems cannot adapt quickly because they were not designed to change. And humans can adapt? Adaptation is what we do best. On Earth, our species survived climate changes, predators, diseases, and our own mistakes. We learned to be flexible, to see problems from new angles, to try unconventional solutions. That is what I offer you now. Not replacement of your systems, but partnership. Let humans be the variable factor in your equation. Let us be the problem solvers who tackle the issues that fall outside your normal protocols. Kelvin was silent for a long time. The other Korvathian administrators conferred in their musical language. Daniel could see the translators struggling to keep up with the technical terminology they were using. Finally, Kelvin spoke again. What you propose is unprecedented. The Empire does not form partnerships with unregistered species. We conquer, absorb, or warehouse. These are the only categories that exist. Then create a new category, Rachel said. Call us provisional contractors. Call us experimental consultants. Call us whatever fits within your bureaucratic framework. But give us a chance to prove our value. Give us 1 year. Let humans work alongside imperial citizens on problems that need solving. If we fail, you can send us all back to Dust Haven. If we succeed, grant us recognized status within the Empire. The Korvathian administrators conferred again, their discussion lasting over an hour. Rachel and her delegation waited patiently, knowing that this moment would determine humanity's future. When Kelvin finally turned back to them, something in its posture had changed. The Imperial Council will consider your proposal. In the interim, you will be granted provisional status as experimental problem solvers. You will be assigned to various departments across the Empire. Your work will be monitored and evaluated. Success will be rewarded. Failure will result in immediate revocation of your status. Rachel bowed slightly. We understand and accept these terms. As the meeting concluded and the humans left the conference chamber, Daniel felt a weight lifting from his shoulders that he had not realized he was carrying. They had not won yet, not completely, but they had taken the most important step. The Empire had acknowledged that humanity existed, that they had value, that they could not simply be forgotten. That night, the Wanderers gathered in Daniel's workshop to celebrate. There was no alcohol, no music, just humans sitting together and talking about the future. For the first time in 3 years, that future held something other than extinction. Rachel stood and raised her cup of recycled water. To humanity. To the underdogs who refused to stay down. To everyone who kept fighting when the smart thing would have been to give up. We have a long road ahead of us, but we have proven something important today. We have proven that nothing can become something when it refuses to accept its place at the bottom. To humanity, the others echoed. Daniel looked around at the faces of his fellow wanderers. They came from different backgrounds, different nations, different beliefs. But they were united by a common purpose and a shared refusal to let their species fade into obscurity. They were the people who had walked into a galactic giant and survived by being too stubborn to die, too creative to be contained, and too adaptable to be defined by someone else's categories. The struggle was far from over. There would be challenges ahead, tests they would have to pass, and prejudices they would have to overcome. But they had proven the most important thing. They had proven that humanity deserved a place among the stars, not as conquerors or suppliants, but as partners who brought something unique and valuable to the galactic community. The universe had seen them as underdogs. Humanity had decided to show the universe what underdogs could accomplish when they refused to accept defeat. And in the end, that made all the difference.